got to talk about Guinea's goal, mate.
Absolutely. And the build-up to that's really good as well. I thought we played out of tight positions. We were like, look at that. He hit the griddy as well while he was doing it. Yeah, it's impressive. It's impressive. I didn't know that John McGinn could griddy, but here we go. Hello and welcome back to the Villa Fella podcast. I'm here as always with my good friend Dan Wiseman. Dan, Aston Villa 3, Fulham 1, 13 home Premier League game win run continues. What a time to be alive, mate.
Mate, you're damn right. What an afternoon. What a Sunday for Aston Villa Football Club. Got a win in the WSL for the first time this season as well.
A long time.
Mate, long overdue. So that's our first points of the season. Takes us off the foot of the table. Got a 2-0 win over Bristol City. Ebony Salmon scoring our first league goals for Aston Villa since 2017-18. Obviously got off the mark since her return midweek in the Cup. She's on the score sheet. 2-0, 3 points, clean sheet. And then what a show from the lads as well. It is a great time to be a Villa fan.
It is, mate. It's a shame we didn't actually get the clean sheet in this one, but I'm sure we'll get onto that. Before we do, though, just got to give a shout out to listener Jean, who I saw after the game, and I remembered actually we had a conversation, and I saw Jean last season, but we couldn't remember which game it was. I'm fairly sure it was Leeds at home. I jogged my memory in the car, so shout out to you, Jean. I know you'll be watching on your iPad. I know you'll be in the comments after this, so your support is really appreciated. It was really nice to see you and catch up with you again. But let's talk about the game now, mate, because that's ultimately what Jean's here for. I was really happy with how this went, to be fair, mate. Again, you know, it would have been nice to have kept a clean sheet, and maybe there was even another goal in this game for Villa. But the whole sort of, I guess, like the response to Forest has been really strong, and we came out as a slightly changed 11. Nicolo Zaniolo not in the 11. We started Yuri Tielemans, and Tielemans is, we've said this after both of the Alkmaar games, mate, haven't we? That he further up the field has been fantastic, and that's absolutely where he should play. And it was quite an interesting shape from Unai today, and how we chose to deploy Tielemans probably made us look like the most balanced we have all season, like dropping Zaniolo, and they're completely different profiles. But I think for this game specifically, it worked really well as well to sort of try and overrun that midfield, make it as difficult as possible for Joao Palhinha, who we mentioned in the preview. And this could be something that I think we may see a fair bit this season, actually, with the sort of squad rotation. I think after today, it's safe to say that Tielemans could quite easily force his way into the 11. It's almost his spot to lose now.
Mate, he was fantastic. That's his first start in the Premier League for us, which is pretty crazy. I don't think he would have thought prior to joining that it would have taken him till November to achieve that. He's just our most subbed on player this season, I believe. And so he's probably been overdue a start. And you know what? I think we probably expected a lot from Yuri early on, because obviously he was more than acclimatized to the league. And so probably wasn't afforded the kind of warm-up period that a lot of players get when they move from overseas. And so we kind of expected Yuri, and you know, maybe rightly so, to kind of hit the ground running, but it hasn't quite worked as such. He's clearly needed a little bit of time to get his feet under the table and everything like that. But we're really starting to see just how valuable he can be for this squad. And it's going to be one hell of a selection dilemma, isn't it, when everyone's fit? I feel like at the moment, when you've not got JJ in the mix and guys like that, Buendia as well, who kind of operate in these very similar positions, but when you've got that full array of talent at your disposal, Emery's going to have one hell of a selection headache.
It's going to be really hard to pick. And I mean, I guess it will depend on opponents and whatnot. I think I mean, even still, I think we really missed JJ. We missed that directness. We missed the pace. We missed the power. We missed the intensity that he brings to the team. But I mean, today really, really happy again just with Tielemans, and I think the way that midfield functioned, like it went exactly as we'd hoped for in the preview, didn't it, mate? We really gave Palhinha a lot to think about. John McGinn was basically man marking him and did so magnificently. And I think it's good to note that as well, because it felt at times in the European game midweek that he wasn't necessarily in the game, and that wasn't to say that he had a bad game, but we just didn't tend to play through John McGinn in that game. But we really needed his energy and his intensity. I think that pivot of Palhinha and Iwobi, whilst it has fantastic legs in Iwobi and obviously the Premier League's premium interceptor, tackler, disruptor in Palhinha, our four really gave them a run for their money. And I feel like this happens all the time. I feel like every time I watch Alex Iwobi, I go, fantastic engine, shocking player. Like there's not a blade of grass that he doesn't cover, but there's just no output from him. And thankfully so in this case as well. Obviously he was subbed off. I think his last appearance at Villa Park, he actually went off injured because he overexerted himself. I believe he got cramp and had to come off. But this really was this is what Unai Emery is all about, isn't it? It's a slight tweak to the system. It's more of a diamond in that midfield. Diaby's role was more clearly defined, wasn't it? He was basically a second striker, with Ollie Watkins basically sat on Tim Ream's shoulder for the whole game as well. I think on another day, Diaby probably gets a bit more out of Ream. But this is how like it's a slight change, but we managed to get so much out of it, mate, didn't we?
Yeah, I just thought that we swamped their kind of sort of a three-man midfield, really, of Iwobi, Palhinha and Pereira. And that box kind of midfield that Emery runs just was in a league of its own today. I thought all of the lads were great, really. And it feels like everybody is really starting to get a grip of their roles and how it's supposed to function. And I felt that particularly in the first half, it was really fluid and the way that we moved the ball was great. And I think that's something that we're starting to see more and more in these kind of wins, particularly at home, in the way that we move the ball and how confident we seem now in playing through the thirds and going through these different phases just seems to get slicker and slicker each week. We definitely need that to translate that to away grounds as well. And that's kind of a whole different conversation. But at home, we just look absolutely untouchable right now. And I just think that the way that we start, the intensity that we bring, obviously it could have been 1-0 much earlier on because there was that handball decision. Ref gave the penalty on field. It was then rightly ruled out by VAR. But we just come flying out the traps in these home league games. And it makes nights like Thursday maybe feel a little bit confusing, but I think so much of it is down to how well that midfield operates.
Absolutely. And on that penalty, mate, seems the decision was called right, but to give a goal kick afterwards, because
yes, yeah.
I mean, it had hit off Castagna's chest, I think they'd decided, and then gone out for what should have been a corner. So it's like, again, here we're talking about another decision that didn't necessarily go our way, but we didn't get the correct outcome from it. And it felt pretty obvious to everybody in the stadium that was a corner ball, and thankfully it hasn't cost us. But it's another time that we're talking about refereeing decisions. I'm a bit gutted that the ball didn't actually seem to touch Diaby for the first goal, mate, because certainly from where I was sat, it looked like a really cute finish. Obviously, seen all the replays, but the ball from Dougie to Tielemans really makes this with his left foot as well. Dougie Luiz is just in a league of his own right now, isn't he, mate? He's absolutely storming, and it's a quality assist from Tielemans as well. I think a lot of the time, Fulham's right-hand side were anticipating Dean trying to make it to the byline, and he was actually a very good decoy for a lot of sort of late Tielemans runs into that position, which they didn't necessarily expect, which is obviously where we get the joy from in that first goal. And that's as routine as it gets, mate. They've done that on the training ground hundreds of times in the build-up, and it's great to see like a clear pattern of play actually evolve and like happen in front of your eyes, just unfolding. Again, a shame it didn't go down as a Diaby goal, especially in FPL. I think they've given it him as an assist because it was actually an own goal, even though I don't think he touched it. But that obviously gets us started as well, doesn't it? Because, as you said, we could have gone 1-0 up early. I think after the penalty and the VAR decision, it took a little bit out of us, sort of 5 or 10 minutes where we weren't attacking as intense as we were in the build-up to that. But that goal came at a vital time for us.
Yeah, didn't it just? We really kind of kicked on, and we came, again, it kind of felt that it was a little later perhaps than we were due. I thought we were good value. I mean, Anthony Robinson had himself a day. He had himself a day, an own goal, a booking, and then an assist. Did it all at both ends in both the right and wrong ways. But yeah, it was long overdue, and we have this amazing record now when we take the lead in home games, and the way that we keep our foot on the gas and we go after more. That's 23 goals now in 6 home games so far in the Premier League, which is more than anybody else has scored at home by 5 goals. So it's not by some little margin either. We are by far and away the league's best team at home this season. Played 6, won 6, scored 23, conceded 5, a goal difference of plus 18. Liverpool have also won all 6 of their home games as well, but haven't scored as many as we have. So we've got that superior goal difference. And the way that as soon as we get one, famous last words, I know, but there's almost a kind of sense of inevitability now that we push on, particularly against the opposition, which can come in the bottom half of the table. We just look like such good value for a win. And we made it hard for ourselves, and I suppose we'll come on to that shortly. But by and large, this Villa team plays with such a confidence that even when we did concede a goal towards the end and it started to feel a little bit ropey, I'm never really too concerned. I've got such trust in the players and the manager that they can kind of handle these situations. But making sure that by the time we get around to that, more often than not at home, we've got a 2 or 3 goal lead and we've got that real safety buffer. That's key. And the goals are coming in from lots of different places. I was happy for Ollie as well that he got on the score sheet later on in the game. But got to talk about Guinea's goal, mate.
Absolutely. And the build-up to that's really good as well. I thought we played out of tight positions. We were like, look at that. He hit the griddy as well while he was doing it. Yeah, it's impressive. It's impressive. I didn't know that John McGinn could griddy, but here we go. That goal it's vintage John McGinn, really, isn't it? Fakes with his right onto his left, places it really well in the bottom corner. And like, I was having a conversation with mates before the game, and they were going, what they were saying that they felt that a lot of players in this team were replaceable, and I was like, "Are you crazy? Like, how do you replace Ollie Watkins?" And they're like, "Oh, well, he's not hit 20," and I'm like, "Yeah, but who does? Like, 20 goal a season strikers are unicorns. Like, it doesn't matter." And today is case and point to that because. Okay, there's an own goal, but we could maybe even say Diaby's on the score sheet. There's Guinea. Obviously, Ollie gets his goal as well. But goals are coming from everywhere in this Villa side. And it's like, yeah, obviously you want your strikers to be hitting double digits. And I think Ollie probably will hit 20 Premier League goals this season, if I'm being completely honest. But there's nothing's guaranteed, right? Nothing's guaranteed. Even with someone like Nico Jackson, who we obviously spoke about probably a year ago when Unai first came in, transfer rumour mill, the big money that he signed for Chelsea. People calling his hat-trick last week the worst hat-trick of Premier League history. I know he scored tonight as well against Manchester City, but like that just goes to show like all the money that Chelsea have paid for this guy, and like he's only just starting to score goals. We're like 12 games into the season. So it's one of them where like I'm happy goals coming from everywhere. Obviously I want Ollie Watkins to score, but at the moment things are looking good. And I think the third goal is my favourite goal because the build up right from the start, Leon Bailey obviously beginning that attacking movement with the ball, finds John McGinn, who just perfectly, I don't know how he managed to pick him out on the sort of his left shoulder as he was coming in, because he looked so tight with how he was marked. It's a great pass, cut back from Bailey to Watkins at the far post, and I mean, the score. That was a really impressive move, that composure. I think there's a few instances as well, even before Guinea's goal, where He was in opportunities where he felt like he needed to shoot or like held onto the ball for a little bit too long. So it was really good, like when it counted, the fact that he was able to stay composed, pick out a really good pass as well. And obviously you've got to give Bailey the credit for starting the move. More impact
Yes.
bench. Like, this is great. Like, Leon is doing great.
Mate, he really is. And I think there's a genuine role for him here. I think coming off the bench, he's really providing a lot of value. And I know that I kind of spoke last week about how we need like a bit more from me, Leon, maybe in times of adversity, but there's no doubt in the kind of the quality that he's got coming on in these games against kind of tired defenses. And I love that it's a kind of more of the same from Moussa Diaby. Normally when you bring on a substitute, you're kind of wanting them to bring something different to the player that they're coming on for. But I love that when he kind of comes on for Diaby, it's kind of like you're just sending a recharged version of the same player like back onto the pitch. And it's against tired legs when games are stretched and they become like opposition is starting to chase the game in transition. Leon's just so dangerous. And so, yeah, I was absolutely delighted for him, man. The last goal is really, really good. It is really, really good, as you rightly say, mate. And capped off what was kind of, it summed up the afternoon, really. And we had a sort of similar chance in the first half where Guinea was kind of carrying the ball and then he had two options. I think Diaby was running left, Ali was running right. He went with Diaby in the end, but probably could have gone loan, to be honest with you. But I thought the way that we executed that break was really, really smart. I kind of want to talk about teams. We're learning these passages and we're learning the movements of other players. That goal just looks so well orchestrated. Like, good teams score those kind of goals, and we're starting to see that from Villa, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. These guys are calculated in everything that they're doing, and they are a credit to the manager because he's getting so much out of these guys. You have to talk me through the Fulham goal, mate, because at the time there was a family in the boxes and they were chanting. They like got a John McGinn chant going, and I'm fairly sure that they were his family because they were loving it. They were like up and down, dancing about, and then all of a sudden I've turned around and I see Emmy's picking the ball up from the back of the net. Obviously, Jimenez scored the goal, assisted by Robinson. Yeah. But talk to me how it got to that, because I didn't see the build-up.
Mate, it was, it kind of came, I think Fulham had a good start to the second half, and I thought they were a much better side in the second half than they kind of were in the first. But it still doesn't really, it's an interesting one. We didn't really fall asleep. So it's a ball kind of played over the top, and it raises, we haven't got a particularly high line. I know that that's going to be a lot of the conversation, because I did think Fulham started to suss it out. And particularly when they brought Adama Traore on, I think those are the kind of telltale signs that they were getting it. So a ball comes over the top. I think it's from Harry Wilson. Anthony Robinson, as I said, gets onto it. And it's actually quite similar to our goal in that he slides it across for Raul Jimenez. I think that's his first goal in 8 months.
Typical, isn't it?
And so typical that the former Wolves player scores against the Villa. But now that we've got 3 points and everything like that, I can honestly say, like, I'm happy for the guy. It was like a really awful injury, and I kind of spoke about this in the preview. And that it's good for him. I'm happy for him that like he's back on the score sheet. Shame that had to be against the Villa, but now we've got all 3 points. I can say that pretty comfortably. But yes, it's just interesting now. Maybe that we spoke about it post Alkmaar. We spoke about it after the Forest game. We've spoken about it now, kind of, in the Fulham game, in the opposition are starting to get to grips maybe with our hard line. And it's actually quite remarkable sometimes in the Premier League how long it can take teams to adapt to tactical nuances that other teams bring. And we've said this before when teams come up with the Championship. It's like, if you can do something even slightly differently, and you can pick up points in the first half of the season because teams take a while to adapt. It's actually quite amazing how far you can go. So obviously, like I say, the first time Sheffield United come up, I mean, under Chris Wilder, they obviously had the kind of overlapping centre-backs, the really effective 5-back formation. And it took the league ages to figure it out. It was the same sort of thing with Bielsa ball. Nobody had an idea of what to do with it. But as the second half of the season came around, gradually teams started to figure it out. And so Villa have come into this season playing this high line, and it's the talk of the town with Ange and everything like that. And so we sit here in November, and it's only now that teams, and you're seeing it with Spurs too, are starting to figure out how to play against this high line. And so Fulham have scored from it today. Obviously, we know that Alkmaar had some joy with it on Thursday night. Obviously, we've got some pretty savvy teams coming up, including Tottenham, the other side of the international break and stuff like that. So maybe it's just something we kind of... I don't think Unai is going to compromise his style, but it's maybe a trend starting to emerge.
Essentially, mate, I mean, listen, they still had 7 offside. They were offside 7 times in this game.
Yep.
So it's not a case of it not working. It's more just like, as you say, teams are and will wise up to it. And that's something in game that I guess you have to give credit to managers and players for sorting. But again, you know, against AZ, there was 8 offsides in that game, 9 in the loss against Forest. God knows how many there was for Luton. I'm just trying to pull up the data for that one now. I wasn't actually at that game, so I couldn't tell off the top of my head. So they were offside. Oh God, 6 times. So that's like almost 30 offsides in 4 games, which is, again, like, it's when people, and I know you weren't complaining about the high line, and it's not a case of you not wanting us to play the high line, but I know that is an angle that a lot of Villa fans have. It's working. But yeah, we do have to be aware that at times it probably wouldn't hurt just to drop it 10 yards and see what you do, especially in games like this where, like, if we're being on it, like a better side than Fulham gets another 2 goals in this game, with the second half that we had, because it wasn't a fantastic second half from us, and Marco Silva had his players more organised, and there was like an Iwobi chance where Jimenez was offside just a little bit with a big dribble. Carlos Vinicius rounds Emi, puts it in, offside. So on another day, we could be talking about a 3-3 draw here. So yeah, but it's definitely important to note, mate. But at the end of the day, huge win, record-breaking Villa. 2 weeks now. Luca Dean, Ezri Konsa, they're going to be loving that little break. They have earned it, I think it's fair to say. And yeah, I mean, I'm not sure what's going to happen in the international break. I'm sure there will be plenty for us to talk about, mate. I know there was something that you sent me this morning, which I haven't had a proper chance to look at, but I'm sure we can do a video or podcast on that at some point. And guys, let us know your thoughts in the comment section down below on YouTube. If you're listening on Apple and Spotify, make sure you follow, leave a review, download the episode, share it with your friends. It helps us more than you know. And yeah, like, comment, subscribe, and up for Villa.